Okay, in section 4.1, we are talking about ATP or chemical energy. So there are different types of energy. You've got potential and kinetic energy, and with the chemical energy, it can be either one of those when you end up looking at it. It depends on how you end up arguing the case. So we will do a little activity in class of potential and kinetic energy so you can show me that you know what those two are. So this is, again, 4.1 looking at energy. So the chemical energy used for most cell processes is carried out by ATP. So molecules in food store chemical energy in their bonds. So if you guys remember from the previous chapters when we were talking about uh, the chemistry of life, it was the main one that does the job of storing energy is carbohydrates. That's going to be what we burn for a good portion of our energy. And if you take in too many carbohydrates, you store them in that extra energy in lipids or fats. And so that is going to be what you'll see here in this section is it's going to be sugars mostly that we're going to be trying to break down because it's easier to break those down and quicker to break them down than anything else. So ATP transfers energy from the breakdown of food molecules to do cell functions. Energy is going to be released when a phosphate group is removed. So the energy is actually stored in the bonds between the phosphate molecules. And we'll look at that here in a minute. So you could almost think of the bond as being like a glass tube, and inside that glass tube is a bunch of marbles, and you break that tube, all of that energy is going to be released. So that is where the energy is stored at in the ATP molecule. ADP is changed to ATP when a phosphate group is added. So when we do respiration, that's going to be making this ADP molecule, which is adenosine diphosphate, into ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. So that's what is seen down here at the bottom is anytime you remove an ATP molecule or anytime you remove a phosphate, which is right here, it's going to release energy, and that's going to allow the cell function. And right here, it's going to take energy to be able to add a phosphate back to it. You could actually break another phosphate off of that and turn it into AMP, adenosine monophosphate. You can look at the ATP molecules being a battery. ATP is a fully charged battery. ADP, which is down there at the bottom, is a half-charged battery. AMP is an empty battery. So all the ATP and ADP can do work if need be. AMP, you're not going to get anything from it. So organisms break down carbon-based molecules to produce ATP. Carbohydrates are the molecule most commonly broken down to make ATP because it's just quicker and easier to do it with those molecules. It's not, you're not going to have a large amount of it stored. You can get up to 36 ATP from one molecule of glucose. And like a candy bar, if you were to eat it, there's going to be a lot of glucose in that candy bar. So you'd be able to make a lot of ATP from that one candy bar you were to take in. But again, this is what I was showing you that just popped up on the screen. Tri means 3, di means 2. The ATP molecule is made up of 3 phosphate groups right here. This right here is a 5-carbon sugar, and then this is the a base basically right here. So you're going to end up having that is the structure of the ATP molecule is you've got the adenosine, a 5 carbon sugar, and three phosphate groups are attached to it. That's going to be what makes it up. And again, the energy is stored in those bonds between the phosphates. So you're going to break off the farthest out phosphate for it to release energy. And when it does that, it's going to allow the cell to be able to do work and do functions. So again, this is a fully charged battery. The ATP, ADP is a half charged battery. It still has a phosphate. You could remove it and get some energy from it, but it's not going to be what you'd really want to use. And then that would turn into AMP, which would be adenosine monophosphate, which means 1. So fats, like we talked about earlier in this year, are going to store most of the excess energy. 80% of the energy in your body is found in the fat in your body. So about 146 ATP are made from a triglyceride, so one molecule of fat. Proteins are less likely to be broken down to make ATP because amino acids are not usually needed for energy. About the same amount of energy is received from a carbohydrate. So lipids are going to be a good source of energy because that's where you've stored excess energy from your carbohydrates. That if you take in too many, it stores it as the fat. So this is the idea behind working out as well. So if you are doing a workout, the beginning part of your workout is going to be using the carbohydrates, and then after a certain point in time, you're going to start burning the lipids that you have. So you need to usually go about 30 minutes in length for a workout for you to have burned any of the lipids that you have in your body. So a few types of organisms don't need sunlight and photosynthesis as an energy source. And again, we had talked about this earlier in the year. Some organisms live in places that never get sunlight. And in those cases, they do what's known as chemosynthesis. So chemical energy is going to be used to build carbon-based molecules like the sugars that we were talking about. So it's very similar to photosynthesis. It's going to use chemical energy instead of light energy. So around like deep sea ocean vents, things like that, that's going to be where you should see this take place. So that is the end of the notes of 4.1.